Welcome to episode 148. And it's something that we often hear in the workplace is when people say, I'm so stressed. So today I'm joined by Jess Jasch, who helps leaders and teams build real stress resilience through practical mindfulness. Not hours of meditation or fluffy language, but simple habits that actually work at work. Jess is a wellbeing consultant and embodied leadership coach whose work focuses on using mindfulness and emotional intelligence to improve how we lead and work. And in this episode, we get real about stress at work and what leaders can do today. Jess and I unpack the difference between healthy stretch and system stretch, the early signs you could spot in yourself and your team, and simple ways to check in without feeling like you're a counsellor. You're going to hear quick scripts that you can copy, micro practices that take less than a minute, and easy team rituals that help everyone reset between meetings. So if you want sustainable performance without the burnout, this is a great episode for you. Jess and I did record this in person recently, and because we were in person, we didn't record the video. We kept it as just a really natural face-to-face conversation. So the rest of this video, you're just going to see a static image. But, as I said in another similar video, I know you're all split screening anyhow, so keep the volume on so you can hear Jess, but you're not going to see any more video in the rest of this one. Welcome, Jess.
Hi, thank you.
It's great to have you here today. Now, wellbeing has come up a lot, and even more, I think, since COVID. It really hasn't come out of people's terminology in the workplace. But what are you hearing right now when it comes to stress?
Oh boy, you've mentioned some keywords there that have triggered parts of my brain that are like, oh my God, it's this as well. But what I have seen since COVID is a bit of a divestment from wellbeing, even though it was a really strong element across a lot of workplaces in COVID or during COVID, or at least that first year. But what I'm hearing about stress is it's literally that. It's, oh wow, we're so stressed. Everyone's so stressed. It feels like people are seeing it as this insurmountable mountain that's almost too big that they don't even want to start trying to climb it. Yeah. It feels so big and so uncertain of, well, what are we meant to do? And people want to do something, but
and it's hard with stress because for some people stress is actually a good thing. Like, it makes them perform more and it makes them actually get motivated. Yeah, but it's that tipping point, isn't it, when it goes from stress into burnout. So what does that look like in a team that's really high stress to the point of getting to burnout?
Yeah, I think the difference there is systemic versus almost flow state kind of stress, where it's like, oh, I've got this energy, this drive, and usually it's the systemic elements that impact stress and then burnout within teams and within organizations. And it could be a host of things. It could be, it could be stuff that people have going on personally, because I think we have to remember we're all human. and sometimes that gets forgotten a little bit. We maybe treat ourselves like robots, but I think a lot of it presents as things like disengagement, like people really trying, and maybe their executive functioning has just disappeared out the window, and they're like, what happened? I used to be so good at being able to get onto this. And so it can be engagement, it can be all the usual things really that you might see at home, or with your partner, like it's snippiness, or people are just more sensitive to things, and I think it really shows up in our ability to be in relationship with other people. And I don't of any kind of relationship, working relationship, in interaction with other people. I think that's where it shows up the most, because other people are usually our mirrors. We reflect onto each other back and forth all day long. So Yeah, and usually, like from a business sense, it can be that that loss in, like, all the buzzwords, but it's all true, the loss in productivity or the staff absenteeism or the turnover, because people are stressed and they're burnt out and they think that their only solution is just, well, I've got to leave this job because I don't know what else to do. Like, I've tried, or I don't know what to do and I wouldn't know where to try. So yeah, it's all of the obvious things, but then it's also in the subtlety as well.
Yeah, and some of the things that you mentioned, I think particularly that change in your team members, and sometimes leaders, they notice the change, but they don't want to open the door, they don't want to ask the question because they're like, actually, I'm not a counsellor, I don't know what to do with the answer if I ask the question. So what would you advise if someone's listening that they've got a team member who used to be great and their performance is slipping, there's obviously something happening?
Yeah.
What do they do? What's the best steps?
Oh, I love this question, because you're right. Like, a lot of people, whether it's at work or otherwise, if they see something wrong, sometimes we feel like, or we put the pressure on ourselves to feel like we have to have the answer or the solution or the fix before we actually open up the conversation. And like you said, in most cases, those people aren't actually therapists or, you know, like mental health or emotional health professionals or anything like that, you know. So why should they have those particular skills? But I think it's more about recognizing that we actually don't have to have the solution before we start. And sometimes the solution presents itself just by starting the conversation. And sometimes the solution as leaders isn't actually ours to enact or carry out. So you could start the conversation with someone and you know, I always say, like, if you're going to be like, hey, can we catch up for a quick minute, add a little addendum that says nothing bad, like, you know, like that's just, you know, my preference maybe, but you know, you could just be like, hey, I just wanted to check in. I've noticed that, you know, God, whether you say you've been a little different or like, you know, I've just noticed a bit
bubbly self.
Yeah, you know, depending on what it is, without making an attack, but just say, like, I've just noticed there's been a bit of a change in your demeanor or whatever it is. I just wanted to check in. Is everything all right? Are you doing okay? And that sounds very human to human rather than boss to employee, or, you know, but that is a really good start, because it gives them a space to go, oh, maybe I didn't realize. Oh, what is that? Or actually, you know, I've just got this, that, the other going on, or, you know, I've just been, whatever it is. And them sharing that can often be helpful in itself. But then, again, going back to what do you do with that? All you need to do, I mean, it's not the magic solution, but it's such a good start, is you could refer them, depending on what it is, and we say this in the mental health space as well, as you refer on to support, because no one's, like, I mean, generally, like, not many of us comparatively are therapists in that scenario. So, you know, go, oh, do you want help booking this appointment, or you've got this, but really it's keeping that in mind. If it's a support, you can refer them on to, or say, hey, like, if you need to take 20 minutes to make an appointment or whatever it is you need. And alternatively, or sometimes at the same time as that, one of my favorite questions, and I've asked this during, like, interviewing processes and even onboarding, and I'm not like a HR professional like you, but, you know, just in that lens of well-being is, oh, if I'm in this position, and it's asking them some variation of, or some version of, what is it that you need to be successful? And if it's more of this conversation in response to a change in demeanor or behavior or whatever, it's a, what do you need? Because it actually involves the person in their own solution, and sometimes they've thought about it, sometimes they haven't, and either way they need to consider that. Like, they need to be involved. We can't just be trying to fix everything for everyone without their involvement. But asking them, what do you need? And then seeing what they say, because the response might be something that totally works or is feasible given the role or the workplace or the whatever it is. And it may not be something you already have in practice, but it may just be your ability to even go, oh, actually, yeah, I guess like that's actually no problem if we do that this way, you know, as long as it works for you and as long as that helps you, you know, show up, but as long as that helps you feel better about showing up. Because then it becomes this two-way conversation rather than just, oh, I'm here to solve your problem even though I can't, or it's not just on me, or I'm trying to solve my own problem but I don't have support from my manager or my leader or whoever as well.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because something that I've come across over the years is that often if you ask people the question and just say, look, I've noticed this, they're like, oh, really? Because they have spent so much mental energy masking and trying to turn up to work, you know, inverted commas, normally. And it can actually be really important for the person to realise that, you know, their mental health is, you know, possibly deteriorated more than what they had noticed themselves, because when you're in the situation it's hard to know how you're showing up.
It's so hard. And you know, even masking is exhausting. You know, as a neurodivergent person, it is exhausting and it does make everything seem harder. So the more you feel like you have to mask, like neurodivergency or not, like you know, whether you're struggling or whatever it is, the more that you feel you have to mask, the harder everything actually does become, because it's just extra energy expenditure.
Oh yeah, it's hard. So sometimes when we're talking about, you know, stress and burnout in the workplace, we start to look at, okay, well, what can we do to help relieve stress? And mindfulness, you know, comes up a lot, and I often see people then roll their eyes because they feel like it's a buzz word. So how do you explain mindfulness to someone that's heard the word and just thinks it's woo-woo and I just don't get it? What is it?
I've had so much practice answering this question. This is great. I've never felt more prepared in my life. In sessions I've run with different demographics, including, you know, soldiers who roll their eyes at woo-woo in most cases, but in anyone, it's giving them permission to be like, hey, like, you may have an allergy to this word, but just give me a moment to just explain. And really I describe mindfulness as, very initially I describe it as what helps you just be present right now. You know, it doesn't have to be this Zen state that we all put pressure on ourselves to feel when we practice some kind of mindfulness, but it's literally just a practice. We're not trying to perfect anything, but it's a practice of what helps you just be present right now. And then I usually, if given any opportunity, I usually dive into the science and be like, this is why, and la la la. But that's kind of, it's just this practice, you know, whether it's, if you take 3 to 5 slow breaths, you're practicing focusing on the breath, which is happening in this moment, for example. Or if you run through each of your available senses and just notice something with each sense, one after the other, you're practicing what's showing up in this moment. So that's how I describe it in the very initial, you know, if I have to gently open the door for them in that way, that's how I start.
So people listening might be thinking, okay, well, like, how on earth does that impact on stress? So without going down the rabbit hole too far in terms of research, I know there's lots there.
Yeah.
But how would you answer that? To go, if you, let's say, you know, we're not adding a lot of things to your to-do list. I'm just asking you every day to spend a few moments, be more present within yourself and understand what your senses are doing. How is that going to impact on my stress levels?
So, okay, let me summarize this as best I can, which is good practice. So it's what it's doing is happening internally with your nervous system, and it's a form of regulation or co-regulation if you're doing it with someone else as well. But it's this form of regulating your nervous system so that your body has more practice accessing states of presence. And the science does say that at any stage it is helpful, but when you practice it even before you're in moments of stress, that is actually where it's really, really helpful and has been shown to reduce the effects of stressful events. Not make it go away, but reduce the effects of stressful events when they do happen. So a lot of my research is in military and soldiers and well-being and mindfulness in that way, but I think if it's that extreme, it can apply very easily to workplaces, which sometimes feel like a battle zone too. Yeah. So it is, there's a piece of research I can think of that really found that the participants in mindfulness programs, which is just regular, consistent practice, they were better able to handle significant stresses when those stresses did happen versus participants that weren't practicing that and then were more affected. And again, it doesn't make everything magical, rainbows and unicorns, but what it does with our body and our brain is it helps us to practice something more mindfully, but it helps us to practice something like a muscle so then it's more easily accessible when we do need it.
I think that's an excellent answer.
Thank you. I tried really hard.
Because, it can be very easy to go to, well, this study and this, and but at the end of the day, I think that connection, and we don't realise it, the connection between our brain and our body is so intertwined, and it's easy to forget that if we're stressed, it's actually having a physical impact and limiting us physically.
And even with burnout, there's research that has found that the most common form of burnout is emotional burnout, in the sense of not allowing our body's stress response to complete itself. And if we think about what our body's stress response is, it is physically a chemical reaction in the body. So if we're not letting it move and complete its reaction, because often we try to stuff it down, or we have to compartmentalize sometimes, but then we have to come back to it, but we live in a culture that for a long time has tried to not give us space to do that, especially when it comes to workplaces. And obviously there's an appropriate way to, manage that or handle that. But a lot of the cause of burnout is actually, in short, due to incomplete stress responses that we've just allowed to stay stuck in our bodies.
So what about when leaders are experiencing stress? So what does that look like? How does that show up in communication in the workplace? What does that look like for them? Like, obviously with employees we talked about, productivity, those sorts of things. But if I'm a leader feeling stressed, then I might think that, culturally I need to feel stressed because that's what it's like to be
that's your job.
A leader. But what do you see that show up like? What kind of leader does that look like?
I think it's leaders. I mean, it can show up in all different ways, that it's very unique to, the individual or even the industry, but it's leaders who don't have much capacity beyond just that narrow focus forward. And I mean narrow, not focus and, and the useful kind of focus that's like, all right, let's go. We're hyper-focusing, like we're just getting this done. This is what we're doing. Let's go, team. It's leaders who don't really have capacity, whether they consciously or unconsciously allow themselves to see any other perspective or hear anything else. They're just like, no, so that can
just overload.
So it can show up in like, my way or the highway, because they just don't have the capacity or will or willingness, because they don't want to, because of the stress, to allow any other information in. Like, I know when I'm stressed in different ways, and it's like, I can definitely, if something else changes, it's like, I don't want to, but that's with awareness of that. So it can be very regimented and rigid viewpoints that don't allow for other people's perspectives, especially in a workplace, based on what they are aware of or their experience, or in their role or whatever that is, or even the feedback of, hey, this isn't working for us. It can be, the normalization of overtime, or working at your desk over lunch, like even behaviors like that then normalize it, which isn't healthy. It can be in communication where, again, they don't have capacity to, consider other people might have, or themselves might have stuff going on personally that's impacting that, and try to do that. But then there's also the health implications that I don't know if we need to really go into, because we kind of know, like the health implications of chronic stress and how that can show up. But yeah, I think the experience with having a leader who is stressed, it makes it so much harder to work in a collaborative environment, which is even if the roles aren't quote collaborative themselves, but the running of the business might be, or the running of the team might be, it makes it so much harder to work in a collaborative environment that actually moves the business or the team or the, whatever it is forward. It just keeps it stuck in the status quo. And when we're stuck in the status quo, that may be sometimes seen as like sustainable, but it's not necessarily at a sustainable point that is actually good for us. And it's not necessarily regenerative where what we're doing is fulfilling or expanding our capacity as a business or as an organization or as a team or as an individual as well.
So how do I break out of that? If I'm seeing myself in that right now and going, oh, maybe I'm more stressed than I thought, is there one thing that I could do to try and release that stress valve?
Yeah, so a blanket answer to that, because it would depend on each person differently, is baby steps.
Yeah.
It's like suggesting someone practice taking a little time away from their phone. It's like set a timer for 5 minutes at a time. So it's really baby steps, because we don't actually have to spend, look, I love a long, juicy relaxation session of sorts. Like, I am a fan, but also I am realistic and I don't have time to do that every day, let alone every week. But what is actually more effective is just this, like, what is most consistent, rather than what's the longest amount of time spent doing a mindfulness exercise or something. So I would say baby steps. It would be set your timer and just practice. And you mentioned before not adding another thing to the to-do list. Do it while you're doing something else, while you're driving between your driveway and the end of the street, and just focus on the road, but also on your breath. And you're giving yourself just that short amount of time, assuming your street is not a long road, but you're giving yourself just a short amount of time, so then your brain doesn't sort of wander off, because it will, and that's okay, but it gives it like a focus. So it's just baby steps of what can you do while you're doing something else, but just allows you to practice these little things. And if you take public transport, do it on the bus or the train or the whatever, or if you're cooking a meal, practice noticing, if you have access to this, noticing the feeling of the soles of your feet grounded. And it doesn't, like, you're still cooking a meal, you're still doing your other thing, but it's just this baby step of just practicing. If someone's really, really stressed, that's where I would start. So it doesn't shock the system in the other direction as well, because we're human. If we start going to the gym, we want to do it full out, and then we end up not necessarily breaking our bodies, but feeling that enough to stop, and then we're out of the practice. So it's the same thing, but mentally. And sometimes that can bring up stuff, because we become aware and make sure that you have support and resources around you if it is confronting things. But it's really the baby steps to help your system feel safe in small, consistent increments at a time, because then you're building the habit. And I know that in the business world we love habits and we love habit stacking. But it's useful, but you're also building literally the safety within your system and your body as it gets used to what this new sensation of presence, or just noticing, oh, I've noticed my shoulders are tense. Oh, okay. So that's the long, short answer.
That's excellent advice. Thank you. And I could sit here and talk to you about this for hours, but unfortunately we don't have that. But one final question that I like to ask everybody. If there was one thing that as a business owner or a leader that you wish you knew earlier, what would it be?
About well-being, I
Or
guess.
just anything in general.
Yeah, what would that be? One thing. I think it kind of goes across the board. It could be applied to well-being, but it can also be applied to, you know, your own business success, or just, I think it's allowing yourself to prioritize what is good for you. And for me, that answer is in the lens of well-being. So it's like, oh, I'm just going to prioritize, you know, my morning practice every day, or spending 10 minutes before a client call every time for them, but also 10 minutes after for me to just reset. Like whatever it is, just really allocating and being steadfast with that, but also in the lens of, you know, allowing myself to just be obsessed with the work that I love. Yeah. Like, you know, like without it taking over my life. But it's, I've found, and this could be the ADHD in me, I've found that the more I've just let myself be in it, the easier it's become to be in it. And you know, and
Don't
I've actually
fight against the tide.
and I've actually had more energy outside of work as a result, rather than this pressure to balance things. It's a weird thing that probably requires more time than what we have now to unpack, but like it's this weird thing of I'm not going against the tide, which has actually given me more balance as a result. But that could be a my brain thing.
No, I love it. Thank you. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Through LinkedIn, as a website?
LinkedIn, you'll find me, Jess Jasch. It's pretty easy to find that
I'll
one.
put the links in the show notes as well.
I have a website. It's j-leigh.com.au, or my email, which you can email me through the website as well. It's jess@jleigh.com.au.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been great to have you on.
Thank you.
And for those listening, if you've received value from this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a rating or a review over Apple Podcasts or Spotify, so someone else can also find the episodes to help with their business. Episodes released on Mondays, so click subscribe and you'll be notified of when it's available. If you have any feedback, questions or ideas for future episodes, head on over to amplifyhr.com.au or connect with me on LinkedIn and we can start a conversation.